Julius Caesar's Triumphs and Tragedy by Brian Tomenez and Caleb McGee. Julius Caesar was an amazing leader of the Roman Republic. He was betrayed by the Senate and his son, causing his death. The rise and fall of Julius Caesar, starting 100 BC and ending 44 BC, was mostly a triumph because his amazing leadership over the Roman Empire outweighed his tragic death. Caesar's leading skills were unmatched and was one of the most important leaders in history. On July 13th, 100 BC, Julius Caesar was born to his father, whom he shared his name with, Gnaeus Julius Caesar, and his mother, Aurelia Cotta. He was born into an aristocratic family. However, they were far from rich. From the age of 6, Caesar was taught by a tutor, with the name of Marcus Antonius Nifo. He learned how to read, write, and the laws of ancient Rome. When Caesar was just 16, his father passed away, and at 17, he married the daughter of a politician in Rome. Her name was Cornelia. Julius Caesar's father-in-law, Cinna, was enemies with the current leader of Rome, Sulla. Sulla was also enemies with Caesar's uncle. Caesar decided to join the military to avoid Sulla and his many allies. After Sulla died, Caesar returned to Rome from his time in the military. He was a war hero. After returning, he forged relationships with powerful men like Pompey Magnus and Marcus Licinius Crassus. Pompey was a military general who was regarded as the best in Rome, aside from Caesar, of course. Crassus was also a general, and was the richest man in Rome. Both are very powerful allies to have. Thus, the first, or Great Triumvirate, was born. Pompey and Crassus agreed to help Caesar become consul if he showed favor to their side during his time as consul. Pompey married Caesar's daughter, Julia. With the help of Pompey and Crassus, Caesar was elected the consul of Rome. Think of a consul like a president. Both are the highest ranking position. However, there are two consuls, and they only served a term of 1 year. When Caesar's year of consul was up, his government allies arranged him to become governor of Cisalpine Gaul. When the man who governed Transalpine Gaul died, Caesar was given that title as well. Caesar was to govern 58 BC to 54 BC. Caesar's forces stopped the Helvetii, a tribe of Celts, from leaving their homeland and migrating west. At a meeting in Cisalpine Gaul, Pompey, Crassus, and Caesar agreed that Pompey and Crassus would be consul in 55 BC and extend Caesar's governorship of Gaul to 50 BC. In 53 BC, Crassus was killed in battle while trying to conquer Parthia. 1 year later, in 52 BC, Caesar fought Vercingetorix, a former gladiator in Transalpine Gaul. Vercingetorix knew that any battle waged with Caesar, he would end up losing. So, instead, he decided to wage a battle of supplies by cutting off their supply lines. Caesar's forces attacked Vercingetorix while they were at the city of Gergovia, where they failed and had heavy losses. Later, Vercingetorix and his men were encamped at Alesia, another city. Caesar and his men were attacked, and although the arrival of reinforcements in aid of Celts, the Romans were successful and Vercingetorix was captured. In the same year, Pompey was elected the sole consul, and his relationship with Caesar was broken, and they turned into rivals. Caesar wanted to rule the council in 48 BC because, if there was a tiny period of time where he was a normal citizen, his enemies in the government would arrest him immediately. Caesar needed to maintain control of his men until he was elected. Since Pompey still had an army under him, Caesar needed to make sure that he still had his army at his command at all times. In 50 BC, the Senate commanded Caesar to give up control of his armies and return to Rome, where he would surely be arrested later. A resolution that Caesar and Pompey would give command to both of their armies at the same time was reached. However, the Senate secretly offered Pompey all of the troops in Italy, which would be separate from his command as the governor. Pompey accepted this offer. Caesar stood on the edge of the border to Gaul and Italy, the Rubicon River. He had a choice to make. Either he could relinquish control of his enemies and return to Rome, or he could go forth and ignore the orders of his Senate. He decided to ignore the Senate's wishes, and while doing so, he was reported to have said, "Allah ikta isht." Translated this is "die is cast," meaning what's done is done and there's no turning back. Caesar was much stronger than his opponents. He then went to Spain to utterly destroy Pompey's army. Pompey fled from Spain to the Mediterranean. Caesar followed Pompey to Pharsalus, where he defeated Pompey's army with a very small portion of his legions, but with better strategy. Pompey's trump card was his cavalry on the side that was waiting for the order to attack. Caesar hid a fourth line of infantry behind his cavalry, and when Pompey's cavalry was given the order to attack, Caesar revealed his fourth line of infantry. Pompey's cavalry was caught off guard, and Caesar ordered his infantry to jump out and attack the cavalry with their javelins instead of their short swords. Pompey suffered overwhelming defeat. Pompey had about double the manpower of Caesar, so Pompey should have been the victor even before the battle even begun. But he wasn't. Pompey then fled to Egypt, where King Ptolemy of Egypt arranged for Pompey to be murdered soon after he disembarked. Caesar arrived soon after, and with the help of Cleopatra, conquered Egypt. This is where this famous quote, "Veni, vidi, vici," comes from. After he conquered Egypt, he sent a letter to the Senate saying that he had conquered. Caesar then returned to Rome in 45 BC, where he established himself as the ruler of Rome. 1 year later, a group of his enemies with daggers concealed under their togas stabbed him to death. Shakespeare quotes Caesar as saying, "Et tu, brute," meaning, "You too, brute?" Suetonius, a Roman historian, says that his final words were Greek, while Plutarch, a Greek-Roman biographer, says that Caesar said nothing, and instead pulled his toga over his head and died in silence. Ironically, Caesar died at the foot of Pompey's statue. Caesar's style of ruling made him loved by the Roman people. He helped the post-war debt in a unique way. Caesar also helped with the unemployment problem in Rome by offering people a chance to go work in Rome's colonies that were overseas. He kept the republican institutions in place, like the Senate, but still was the dictator of Rome. He kept the people happy and helped poor people. Overall, he was loved by the citizens in Rome. Caesar was a very important person in the history of the world. Caesar's leading skills were so good that he may have inspired Napoleon Bonaparte, who went on to conquer much of Europe and be the Emperor of France. The Germans even derived their word Kaiser, meaning emperor, from Caesar's surname. Caesar was one of the most important people in ancient history because of all of the things that he had done and the fact that he inspired some of the great leaders in history.